Are we confronting catastrophe after all? NASA specialists had really given the all-clear for the space rock Apophis and determined that it will simply miss us in 5 years. But now, according to another study, Canadian stargazer Paul Wiegert has come to the conclusion that the 350-meter enormous stone may as yet alter its course and take an unfortunate diversion. But how likely is it that Apophis will slam into a smaller object and then put its focus on Earth? What might be the consequences of this, assuming the worst? And in the event that it came to that, would there be anything we could do to prevent an impact? On June 19, 2004, stargazers Roy Tucker, David J. Fallon, and Fabrizio Bernardi gave the world two things: on one hand, the information that a previously unknown space rock was circling out there, and on the other hand, outright media panic. The divine body, designated Apophis, quickly made headlines as an alleged killer space rock that will come dangerously close to Earth on April 13, 2029, a Friday the 13th of all things. There is no question that the name of the 350-meter-wide space rock doesn't bode well. After all, Apophis shares its name with the ancient Egyptian lord of chaos and darkness. Even leaving aside all the ominous associations, the first estimates by NASA specialists gave cause for concern. According to these, the impact likelihood in December 2004 was estimated at 1 in 37, or 2.7%. To put this into perspective, this is the highest value for a space rock of this size that has been reached on the Turin risk scale to date. Indeed, the corresponding impact likelihood at that time not only referred to the year 2029 but also to the years 2036 and 2068. We probably don't need to mention here what the media response was in the face of these figures. But today, 20 years later, the editorial and astronomical attitudes have long since calmed down again. Thanks to detailed subsequent examinations, it's now considered almost impossible that Apophis will collide with Earth in 5 years, well, unless something unexpected happens in the coming years that undermines all mathematical calculations. But more on that in a second. What is certain, anyway, is that the impact of Apophis would probably not evoke a global apocalypse as did the space rock that brought the end of the dinosaurs 66 million years ago, because the object is simply too small for that. Unfortunately, however, it is clear that the consequences of a hit would nonetheless be gigantic. According to the researchers, the impact crater alone would be several kilometers in diameter, and the force of the crash would be great enough to wreck a region the size of Central Europe. Specifically, the scientists suspect that Apophis would release the energy equivalent of 900 million tons of dynamite in the process. By comparison, the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, had an explosive power of just 15,000 tons of dynamite. And although these figures are both impressive and alarming, the energy of the speculative space rock impact would have to be 10 times greater to destroy the entire surface of the Earth. Experts generally assume that the immediate kill zone would have a diameter of 250 kilometers. However, the exact impact results would depend heavily on where the space rock crashes to Earth. If Apophis were to collide with the ocean, it could cover the nearby coasts under a monstrous tsunami more than 100 meters high. And there, as well as in the flat hinterland, it would kill countless living beings. Could Apophis hit Earth after all? The good news, however, is that as things stand, what we have just heard is only an unpleasant mental exercise. As already mentioned, past trajectory observations indicate that Apophis will barely miss Earth. The word barely, in this context, means a distance of 32,000 kilometers, so in 2029, the space rock will pass beneath the geostationary orbit. However, the all-clear regarding an impact comes with a small, but perhaps significant, caveat: Apophis will only pass the Earth if its trajectory remains unchanged. The probability of a change in orbit is low, but not zero. And that's not all. In fact, astronomers have confirmed that the space rock is currently in the process of changing its orbit. The radiation pressure of the Sun is shifting it by around 170 meters each year. Fortunately, however, this shift isn't enough to direct Apophis towards Earth in 2029. Unfortunately, however, it could lead to an impact during a later pass. There is also some perhaps unsettling news. Even the best current projections can't rule out the possibility of Apophis being hit by a smaller space rock. Canadian stargazer Paul Wiegert from the University of Western Ontario explains that such an impact could move enough momentum to fatally redirect Apophis. NASA's DART mission stunningly demonstrated how a celestial body can be redirected. In that mission, the DART spacecraft acted as a flying battering ram and crashed into the surface of the 1,065-meter-wide space rock moon Didymos. While this diversionary maneuver was nothing more than a large test, a collision with Apophis might have serious consequences. When does it become dangerous for us? As already mentioned, Apophis avoidance was confirmed in 2020. Considering this, one might think that the specialists would be well advised to keep a close eye on Apophis. And that's exactly what they would do, provided they could still see the anomaly. Unfortunately, Apophis has been out of our natural view since 2021, and it won't move back into view until 2027. This is for the simple reason that the space rock is currently moving close to the Sun, making it invisible even to the most powerful telescopes. So what happens in the meantime is uncertain, and we won't know how much it has changed its orbit until a maximum of 2 years before its flyby. Luckily, direct observations aren't the only way to assess the risk of redirection. Using a model simulation, Paul Wiegert has analyzed what exactly would have to happen for Apophis to pose a danger to us. The astronomers' first task was to determine the potentially dangerous size of the battering ram space rock. Previous studies had already shown that Apophis' orbit would need to be moved by around 200 kilometers to allow it to enter the so-called keyhole. This keyhole refers to a small zone near Earth where the planet's gravitational pull would redirect Apophis in 2029 enough to put our planet deliberately in its sights when it next appears in 2036. And if you think it would take a fully grown giant to guide Apophis through the keyhole, you're mistaken. In fact, a collision with an object just 60 centimeters across would be enough. Such an impact would change the space rock's speed by around 3/10,000ths of a meter per second, paving the way for the necessary shift of 200 kilometers. The conditions for an impact in April 2029, on the other hand, are rather different. For this, the change in Apophis speed would need to be around 0.02 meters per second. In other words, it would need to impact an object around 3.4 meters in size. For us inhabitants of Earth, it is somewhat reassuring that the mere collision alone wouldn't be enough. The impact would also need to happen at a very specific time and with the appropriate direction. On probabilities and the potential for knowledge, there is no doubt that this is fundamentally possible. But how likely is it? Well, in this regard, Wiegert points out that around 140 objects, 60 centimeters wide, hit Earth every year, while there is only one object with a width of 3.4 meters. Converted to the significantly smaller cross-section of Apophis, this means that the probability of the space rock entering the keyhole due to an impact is 1 in 1 million. The calculated probability of an impact in 2029 is even lower. According to Wiegert, this is 1 in 100 million. And considering that only 5% of the hits of a 3.4-meter wide object give an impulse in the decisive direction, the corresponding probability drops even further to less than 1 in 2 billion. As we can see, the risk of an impact is quite reasonable from a purely numerical perspective. But if, against all odds, the space rock comes into close contact with the Earth, our number games will no longer help us. And since this scenario cannot be completely ruled out, it's all the more important for the specialists to measure Apophis' trajectory as accurately as possible again from February 2027, when it comes back into our field of vision. A deviation of more than a few tenths of an arcsecond could indicate a disturbance in its orbit. However, according to Wiegert, this doesn't necessarily mean that the space rock is on a collision course with Earth. Further examinations and analyses would be prudent. In fact, researchers are now in the process of developing a small satellite to accompany Apophis during its Earth passage. After all, we should not forget one thing: despite all the calculations, Apophis also offers specialists a massive potential for data, as an approach of a lump of this size happens only every few thousand years on average. The passage also offers scientists the rare opportunity to study a near-Earth space rock up close. And the same concerns you, By the way, when Apophis enters our domain, it will reveal itself as a small, glowing dot in the night sky. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this journey into the mysteries of the universe. If you found this video interesting, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more amazing updates.